Hi, this is part 4 of the bowling alley project. On the screen is a single frame render of where my project is at this point. If you're having any difficulties, please be sure to email me right away and we'll get it straightened out. Last time we left off, you were tasked with creating your 10 pins and setting them up there on the lane. So I'll zoom in here. And I did replace the pin that I was working with in the previous video and put a different pin. It's the pin I created as a vector object. But this is basically how yours should look. And of course, you may not be using traditional pins, and that's fine. Now we'll look at the pin setter and the sweep rack. I already created them, but I will show you how you can create simple ones, and then you can get more elaborate if you want to. I'll hide a few layers right now and zoom in, and I'll hide this pin setter. All right, here's the sweep rack. You can see it's a very basic shape. And let me hide that and then show you the pin setter. And this has a slightly different shape. They tend to be narrower and it usually appears curved in the front because it's an object that's kind of rounded so that it can fit around all of those pins the way that they're stacked. And as you can see, I already put some shading and the other one had some text on it as well. It's best to create these right in front of the pins starting out before you move them up and out of the way. The reason for that is because you need to see how they're going to fit in this area. So I'll show you just the basic design. Click on the new layer icon and choose vector and name this either sweep rack or sweep, and I'll hide this pin setter to get it out of the way. Now click on the draw shape icon and the rectangle. Choose a color. You can always change this later. And draw a tall, thin rectangle over here. You may want to make that narrower than your gutter. These are gutters here on either end. So you can click on the transform point and grabbing a little handle here, you could narrow that up if you need to. And you want the length of it to go well beyond this area here, this opening. So it's okay for it to be too long. That's not a problem because it's going to be hiding behind that panel up here. And then you can, click on this and do a Control-C for copy, Control-V for paste, hold your Shift key down, and drag the copy over to the other side above this gutter. All right, so they're kind of evenly spaced above the gutters. And then you just want to make a rectangle down here, right, for that front plate of the sweep. So draw shape, rectangle, and just make that. Now you may want to refine that by zooming in, clicking transform points, getting the edges even, do whatever you need to tidy it up. Now let's just say you've got this perfect and how you want it to be. You can just make a copy of that, duplicate layer. You can name this pin setter. And now let's shut off sweep. Let's hide that. Click the eyeballs. And the pin setter really should not be this wide. Okay, only wide enough to reach around the total distance of the pins here. So you could click on the transform layer icon and grab a little handle here, shrink that in. And if you wanted to shape this piece up down here, let me click on the transform points tool and activate this one piece a minute. I'll zoom in. So you'd have to add points, okay? If I clicked on the add point tool right here and then pointed to the center and waited until that little dot appeared, trying to magnetically attach, and then maybe just pull that down to round it out. Okay, that's a real simple way to do it. You want to set the origin point for both the pin setter and the sweep. So clicking on the pin setter and going over here to set origin, just set the origin about in the center of that piece there. And then click on the sweep, unhide that. Probably click on the eyeballs for the pin setter to hide that momentarily. And then with set origin, just click about in the center of that piece. Okay, zooming back out again. Now we need to move those up and out of the way. They aren't going to start down there. But when you move them, be sure that you hold your shift key down because you want them to go straight up from where you placed them. You know, the whole point of getting the placement correct was actually building them down there in front of the pins. So we don't want to mess that up. So go over here to transform layer, and then right now I've got sweep active. So I'll hold shift and I'll push this up, and I'll even push it up so that the top's showing beyond the stage area. That could be helpful later on. It will probably also be helpful if we move the pin setter to approximately that same zone there. So I'm going to click on the eyeballs for pin setter, click on the pin setter layer, be sure I've got transform points selected, or excuse me, transform layer, and hold the shift key down and then push this straight up to about there. Now, of course, it would be wise to use two different colors, so go ahead and draw those two objects. I'm going to pause now and I'll continue in the next video.